Welcome, friends, to the Everyday Educator podcast, where we explore what it means to learn alongside our families every day. We want to encourage one another as we ponder the delights and challenges that make homeschooling the adventure of a lifetime. Now, whether you are new to the homeschooling adventure or deep into the daily delight of learning together, we're glad you found us. But don't forget, while this online community is awesome, you will find even closer support in a local CC community. So go to classicalconversations.com and find a community near you today. I'm Lisa Bailey, and I'm your host today, and I'm super excited to have my two guests with me. You guys are going to be blessed and entertained and encouraged and equipped and inspired and all that stuff. With me today, I've got Leigh Bortins, who is, of course, our founder and our chief vision officer for Classical Conversations. Leigh, thanks for making time for us today.
Oh, I'm always happy to be with you, Lisa.
We have a good time. Who knows what we'll talk about, and maybe we'll even stick to the script. Okay. Leigh and I are both excited to have with us today Ginny Yurich. Ginny is an author and a podcaster, and as Leigh said, a bubbly enthusiast for the homeschooling life that she lives with her family. Ginny, welcome.
Thank you for having me. I'm honored to be here.
Now, I want to start out, Ginny, by letting you just kind of set the stage for us. Tell us a little bit of your story, and I will tell folks, look, I've got Ginny's latest book here. It is not a signed copy because I only know Ginny online, but this is a great book, Homeschooling. You're doing it right just by doing it. And we're going to get the principles behind that. But I was going to say, the fleshed out version of Ginny's homeschool story is in here. But I want you to give us a thumbnail, Ginny. How did you come to homeschooling, and what did you know about it before you began, and what worked for you, and take it from there.
Well, we are the biggest fans of homeschooling. It is the best decision that we've ever made. And we have a child who is about to graduate. Our first one is graduating this year.
Yay.
And it has just been such a tremendous blessing to all of us. And I really can't imagine not having the time together. We're huge classical conversations fans. We've got dear friends, Carl and Colleen Johnson, they run one here in Michigan where we're at. And my friend Rebecca Lovell does it. And we've had other friends over the years who have popped in and out, and we really love the resources. Like, we know the timeline song. We've had the cards where you can lay out all the timelines,
yes.
And it's so cool to see like your 6-year-old lay out the timeline of the world and then have those bits and pieces of knowledge to snag back, when other things pop.
Right.
It has just been a tremendous thing. And of course, like, we've had hard days here and there, but everybody has hard days. And people who send their kids to any type of schooling have hard days. I used to be a public school teacher, and when you get the phone call home that your kid is being bullied or the kid is struggling with this subject or whatever's happening, those are hard days too. Life has hard days. So as a whole, this has been the best decision that we have ever made. We knew that we were going to homeschool from the beginning.
Okay.
Solely because of time. So when I was a public school teacher, that's what I did before having kids. I worked in a high school. And the last year that I was working in that high school, I actually switched to an administrator role. And I was helping to shore up the math curriculum all across the district. So teachers were losing autonomy. And I saw that. It was like every second grade classroom, regardless of school, had to look the same. And every second grade teacher, you have to give the same assessments. Mostly they have to be on the same day. So the autonomy was being stripped away. And at the same time, they were trying to figure out what to do with all day kindergarten. So that was new. Like, when I went to kindergarten, I think it was like 9 to 11:30,
Oh, yeah. And we had a rest time in there somewhere.
You painted, that's it. You go home, you have lunch with your mom, or whoever's home. And it switched to full day. And the kindergarten teachers were so adamant. Well, this second half of the day, the kids certainly are going to need to nap. They certainly are going to need to have, some rest. bring back the stations where they play, the doll station and the book station and the painting station. And I didn't realize they had gotten rid of those.
Right.
So the kindergarten teacher says, can we please bring those back? They're going to need time to play. And what ended up happening was that for whatever reason, the powers that be decided not to go along with the kindergarten teachers, and the day just went toward academics. So where we went to school in our district, the bus would come at 8 a.m. and not drop back off again till 4:30 in the afternoon. And I just thought, that's too long for a 5-year-old. So our journey started there, and I don't regret it for 1 second.
Oh, that's so good. So you knew that public school was not for you, was not for your 5-year-old. But what did you know about homeschooling before you started?
Nothing. I knew nothing. You know,
how freeing for you, Ginny.
But I thought I knew something. So we had a plan. We had a plan. We were using the classical conversations, some of the curriculum from pretty early ages. Like I have the books. Anyway, I had a plan, but our plan derailed, and sometimes I feel like this is in the long view, this is God's plan. I thought I had a really good plan, but it derailed. We had a lot of kids in a course of a couple years. And so when the 5-year-old hit kindergarten stage, I had a bunch of little kids too. Right. And my husband lost his job right at the same time. And we also had been renting a home, and the lady wasn't paying the mortgage. So we lost our home, all sort of in this confluence of a couple months. So I was scrambling, and I was planning on being very public school standard centric,
right. Very
check off, and that's in the book. If you read the book, Homeschooling, you're doing it right just by doing it. Where, I knew where to find the content standards, and they were things like distinguish between yesterday, today, and tomorrow. And I thought, well, I can check that off. That's social studies for kindergarten. And can I throw a ball with one hand with one foot back, the other foot back? That's phys ed. And I thought, I'll just check. Well, our life was too chaotic at that point. And so what I had to do is I had to change my educational philosophy, which I didn't even know was a thing. And so that took me down the route of learning that there are, John Taylor Gatto says, as many ways to become educated as there are fingerprints.
Yes.
And isn't that freeing?
Yes. That is very freeing. I'm glad that you said that. It is very freeing. Sometimes I think the people who don't know anything are more successful with homeschooling than the people who know too much. Leigh, when you started down the road of home educating your sons, did you know a lot about homeschooling?
No, I only knew that it was illegal in most states, and that I was going to have to become a lobbyist in order to make it so that, like so many of our friends, I wasn't fined and the children weren't put in foster care. And so it was really, it was a big deal. We were fortunate that we were in Washington State when they were very little, and the compulsory education age wasn't until 8. Yes. And so I had time. But when I moved to North Carolina and it dropped down to 6, then's when I really got involved. But I'm just like Ginny. I knew from the very beginning, I was pregnant with Robert when I knew I was going to homeschool. My husband and I have lots of academic and lots of schooling background, and we had seen the decline, as well as we knew we wanted something different for our children. And one thing I think Ginny will really appreciate is my husband and I were both raised, the minute you went home, you went outside. And you were allowed back in once the street lights came on a school night, and don't come back till the moon's out, if it's not a school night. And so we wanted that outdoor active life for our children. And I think if you read my book, Echo and Celebration, and these books you've helped me write, it's all through there, our time outside with our children. And we really looked at school as a prison, as, 5 days a week, 8 hours a day, where at this point in time, our community actually has laundry done for you. They have washers and dryers in the schools, because the parents aren't doing it anymore because of the opioid crisis and the neglect that's going on. And so here we've put together an institution that does all the same things a prison does. It feeds you, it entertains you, it does your laundry, it makes sure that, when the bell rings, you're in the right room. And we saw that happening back in the good old days when, I'm in my 60s. And so we saw that more than 40 years ago.
Wow.
All right. And so we just wanted more and better for our kids.
Yes. I think that's my husband and I got into homeschooling because I had a friend who said, Well, I asked her. She was a little ahead of me with her kids, and I said, "Well, tell me about homeschooling. We're trying to decide if that's what we're really going to do. I'm pulled toward it." And she looked at me funny and she said, "Yeah, that's what you're gonna do. That's what you're already doing. I'm watching what you're doing with your children. That's how you homeschool." And I was kinda like you, Leigh, and you, Jenny. I wanted more time. I wanted my girls to have more time with me than they had with somebody else, and the things I saw coming out of the public school system did not give me a lot of hope that I would end up with the kind of educated child in all the different ways that I wanted to have them. Um, so, Leigh, you said that when you guys started homeschooling, you put a big premium on learning outside. So, would you say that you were always a more outside or more inside, or was there a good balance, or was it not even intentional? It was just natural that you were out.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was just a natural continuation of the way all generations had been raised. And so we were
Yes.
very fortunate in that we didn't have a lot of money when the children were little. So that meant I had to do the drying outdoors on the line. It meant that there was no TV in the house because we couldn't afford it. And so the only thing to do was go outside. And something a lot of people don't know is the four of us, Robert and John, when we lived in Washington, the four of us lived in a 700 square foot house. So
Mhm.
nobody was going to stay inside anyway.
Not on
And,
purpose.
right. And so it was just naturally how we did things. When our old next two came around, we were in a 2,000 square foot home, right? We had,
Right?
graduated to a little bit of an income at that point. But we lived on an acre with a creek in the woods on top of a golf course. And so, of course, they were outside all the time. In
Yes.
fact, I remember one time I had to take my second to the doctor because he had so many injuries. And we got to the doctor and the doctor started asking questions. And that was during that time when like people were in trouble for letting their kids walk down the street. And I like looked at the doctor, I stopped talking, I looked at my son and I said, explain to him why you are so injured. And, so he went through, well, I hung myself on the rope swing and I sprained my ankle jumping off the roof and I almost drowned saving my friend down at the creek. It's just like, that's our life. It's
That's
just as real.
that's just how it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, that when I asked my older daughter who is almost 32 now, what was her biggest memory of homeschooling, and she said her fondest memory of homeschooling was that we spent the morning um, reading things and memorizing and talking about what they had read. And then in the afternoon after lunch, she said we went outside and we played everything we had read and talked about in the morning.
Mm,
We played all afternoon. And she
wow.
said, so all of that stuff that you read to us, we went outside and it came alive. And I
Wow.
remember her making ovens out of bricks and aluminum foil and houses out of fallen logs and stuff. And so it was great. And that's what she remembers. And I'm so glad that that's what she remembers. Jenny, what is so transformative about being outside?
Everything. It's everything. And you bring up the brick oven and you bring up the aluminum foil, and it's so easy to pass over those things as not important. But when kids play outside, it helps with every facet of their development. It helps their cognition. This helps their brains work faster. There's a statistic that says elderly people who dance regularly have a 76% less chance of developing dementia, which is a really big statistic.
It
I would
is.
love to have a 76% less chance of developing dementia. And the point is that complex movements enhance and protect brain function and the
Mm,
structure. So when kids go outdoors, that's what they do. They do complex movements. You don't have to tell them to do it. You don't have to tell them, go save someone in the creek. They're going to do it on their own, and they're going to be running across the slippery logs and
yep.
the rocks that are turning. And all of that is engaging with their brain. The body is what builds the brain through movement. The brain is
Mm,
not built through, sitting and doing worksheets all the time. It is built
right.
through the complex movements. And I would say that God has provided this world for our kids to challenge them. It doesn't matter what
Yes.
age they are. If they're 7 months old and they're crawling outdoors and there's little sticks on the ground and there is a little bit of a tilt to the grass and there's some pebbles, they're getting all of that sensory input that is very different from a carpeted room. You can also
Mhm.
take your 17-year-old out and they're going to be trying to do trick shots at the basketball net. They're going to be skateboarding. They're going to be fishing. They're going to be tubing behind a boat. They're going to be hiking. They're going to be rappelling. God, this world offers challenge all the way through. All the
Yeah.
way through, there are things that you can be doing outdoors that help your body build your brain. So there's the cognition part. There are the social skills that occur outdoors. There's a fantastic book I just read called "It's Okay Not to Share" by Heather Shoemaker.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
such a good book talking about the intricacies of social skills that you have to learn. How long do you keep eye contact? What do you do if someone crosses your boundaries? How do you stay engaged? How do you make something out of nothing? How do you take sticks and turn it into a mud pie? How do you decide, are we going to play princes or are we going to play house? Like all of that early childhood play is the foundation for social skills. So there's that
Mhm.
part. There's the emotional part that even looking at nature provides respite for children. That's good for adults too. Then there's the physical part, right? Okay, you're
Right.
moving, your
Right.
your eyesight, your thoracic container, your shoulder girdle, your core strength so that you can sit for your lessons as you get older. Your pencil grip, all of those things are happening when kids are playing outside. It's helping with their ligaments. There's this woman named Katie Bowman who says osteoporosis is a childhood disease that shows up in adulthood because kids are meant to jump and land and have all this impact on their skeletal system. And that's what they do naturally if they have the time and space. And then for families that are interested, not all are, but I believe God displays his principles in creation. And so this also helps your child's relationship with the Lord. It helps their spiritual sense, right? I'm here for a purpose. This is a big world. God made me. I can look around and see his design and the artistry of it and the brilliance of it and know that I was made as well. So it really is. There is so much more. And I didn't know. I'm not standing as an expert like I knew this from the beginning. I actually
Right.
fell into it. I actually was dragging my kids all over to all of these different classes that were really short and running myself
Yes.
ragged. And it
Yes.
was just by happenstance that I learned that when you take kids out for large swaths of time, you can do your classical conversations out there. You can take your things, your books, and all of that out there, and just that exposure to nature. It's wonderful for everyone, including the parents.
Yeah.
Yep.
What
I want to add,
differences?
can I
Oh,
add
yeah,
something?
go
So,
ahead.
well,
Yeah.
you're saying for the parents, and that's where I really want to emphasize, because even though we're going to talk about our children, I know that the reason why I fell in love with Latin was because I would sit by the creek for about 3 hours a couple times a week while the boys catch crayfish. And I would study the Latin, or I would study phonics, or I would study the next math lesson while I was outside watching them love life. And that gave me the motivation to do things I didn't really want to do. And so we
Yes.
as parents have to be out there studying also and not being trapped by this air-conditioned building.
Yeah,
There's
that's
there's a
really
quote
good.
there's a quote by John Holt. It's probably my favorite, and it's in my book because it's my favorite. And he says, when children are living fully and happily and energetically, they are learning a lot, even if we don't always know what it is. And that
Yes.
was a really freeing quote to me because when you look around at our world and the majority of children are struggling, that's all the statistics, they talk about they're struggling with loneliness, they're struggling with mental health. And you're like, well, who is living happily and energetically and fully? It's often the homeschool children. And so you can know as a parent that they are learning a tremendous amount. And it's not always the check the box type learning. And that's kind of where you have to let go a little bit and just
Mhm.
trust that they are growing. And you
Mhm.
see that love of life, like you said, Leigh, and that motivates you to keep going.
Yeah. Yeah, when I was reading your most recent book, Jenny, I kept saying, "Yeah, that's right, that's right." But you would go through and there are lists of things that your children are learning, how the benefits that they're gaining from being outside, and you named a bunch of them right there. And when we stop as parents and we sit down and we think, "Well, what is the benefit of turning my children out into the neighborhood in the afternoon?" I mean, beyond the fact that they're not making a mess in my house and I have 5 minutes of peace. So when we sit down and think about it, we can come up with that. They learn to solve their own problems.
That's right.
They learn to be the mediators in their own neighborhood conflicts. They learn, like you said, to make something out of nothing. We can come up with all of these things, but we so often think that homeschooling is just school brought home, where it's all about checking off a specific list of skills that somebody else has come up with. So I love that quote, the John Holt quote, that says you're learning all kinds of things.
Right. And what you brought up is so important. When they have their own time, they're out in the neighborhood. So you bring this up, right? They're out in the neighborhood. They're having to solve their own conflicts. They're having to figure out, are they going to do this? Are they going to do that? They're going to have to use their imagination. I just read a book by a man named Tim Elmore, and he said that the statistics are showing that an average 20-year-old, a Gen Z 20-year-old may have 11 jobs in their 20s, 11 jobs. And so when you think about what skills are necessary for that rapid change of job transition, new boss, new coworkers, new set of skills, the things that children learn in downtime, those are the types of things that prepare them for a rapidly changing world. We cannot have so much adult direction, because if you're used to an adult telling you, do this, do this, do this, do this, and then you enter a world where you have 11 job changes, there isn't going to be someone to guide you through. You have to have your own inner guide. And so when I talk about homeschooling, you're doing it right just by doing it. By the nature of being home, whether you use classical conversations or you use a different curriculum, or you have a different community, whatever the situation is for you, as long as you're not abusing your kids, which I believe is not homeschooling, as long as you're a loving parent who is guiding your kid through, and maybe you're changing from year to year, you're adjusting, which is a model of real life, your kid is automatically going to have some downtime, because you cannot, as one person, whether you have one child or 5 children or 10 children, you cannot fill all of that time. And that is the point. That actually is the good thing. And I think, we look at these kindergarten classes or first grade classes where from 8 to 3, every single minute is filled and they're doing all these crafts. And Heather Shoemaker says, cool it on the crafts.
Let them make adult when they want to.
Those are adult directed. Cool it. That is not necessarily art. It's different than just having papers out and letting the kids color with markers, but really just figuring out, how am I going to structure my life? What makes me tick? And it is vitally important now. Nobody knew the benefits of playing outside because kids just played outside. Nobody needed to know them.
Right.
And now you need to know them, because we have to protect that time and space of childhood.
Hey, I have a question for you, Ginny, with all that you've been saying. One of the things that Lisa and I have been wrestling with all these years is that homeschooling is a horrible name. We're never at home and we're never schooling.
Yep.
Do you have an alternative to refer to it? Because people need to name things, because we differentiate from private school or from a micro school or from dance lessons.
Yeah.
Do you have a good word for it?
I don't think there is a good word for it. I think because it encompasses so much. Some people say life schooling. I like that. I don't like unschooling. John Taylor Gatto talked about the curriculum of family, which I thought was so catchy, the curriculum of family. But I do like home education. But to your point, it's really about family. And some families are home a lot. And that is the point. If you are a more type A mom, or especially at the beginning, if you feel like to transition into home education, you need it to be more spelled out, or maybe you're going to have more type A kids because you're the type A mom. That's okay. There are as many ways to become educated as there are fingerprints, and you're pulling your kids out of a system that is not individualized for them. I want to say this because you brought it up, Leigh, and I've never, ever been able to read this quote because there's never been quite the right situation. But Dr. Peter Gray, who is in his 80s and has done considerable study on children, that they are biologically designed to self-educate. And he talks about how when he was a kid, when he was 4, he would get to walk to the store by himself. So he talks about how there was a lot more autonomy. His grandma would actually send him to the store to buy her cigarettes, because that was okay back then. And it actually was looked better upon that he would go to the store to buy cigarettes at age 4 than for a woman to go. So he tells a story. Yeah. So this would have been maybe in the 50s, or, it's not that long ago that 4-year-olds are walking across a busy road to go to the store to buy cigarettes. So this is what Dr. Peter Gray says. And I'm bringing it up because you brought it up, Leigh. He says, everyone who has ever been to school knows that school is prison. But almost nobody beyond school age says it. It's not polite. We all tiptoe around this truth because admitting it would make us seem cruel and would point a finger at well-intentioned people doing what they believe to be essential. How can I say that these good people who love children and have poured themselves passionately into the task of trying to help them are complicit in a system of imprisoning them? We put adults in prison because they have committed a crime, while we put children in school because of their age.
Have you ever wished that you could just help your student continue the momentum that they started in classical conversations in a college environment? Guess what? Judson College is exactly what you've been looking for. This semester, Judson College is sponsoring the Everyday Educator, and we are so excited to partner with them because we really believe that they have exactly what our students could need for the next leg of their education journey. Let me tell you more about it. So Judson College really values Christian education, and they exist to equip students who want to give their lives for the cause of Christ, wherever he might call them. So that means that they're not just helping students who want to go into vocational ministry, but also students who want to live in the marketplace. Judson College also has a specific community plan for their students. They have smaller class sizes that allow students to have individual relationships with the faculty, and that also helps them to get the attention that they need so that they can learn and grow as professionals. Outside of the classroom, they also have what they call the house system, and that provides a vibrant student-led community where students make lifelong friendships and participate in house competitions and experience deep community all the way from freshman year to graduation. Lastly, something I found absolutely fascinating was that they have a classical emphasis. So they have a great books course, which is required for every single degree in undergrad. And in that course, they focus on the history of human ideas through a biblical worldview. And that allows the students to develop as readers, writers, and researchers as they grow as committed followers of Christ. If you want to find out more about Judson College, visit judsoncollege.com/distinctives. Let's get back to the show.
That's so
It's good.
true.
And it's
That's
so hard.
good.
I tried to say that, like when internet first started, it was before Twitter, and I tried to say something like that, and I was so attacked. You're saying those parents don't love their children, and I was trying to say, no, I don't think they know, because we've had 100 years of
Right.
micro change, every generation losing a little bit more freedom, and they just don't know what's
Mhm.
going on. So wonderful. So
Mhm.
that was Peter Gray.
Yeah, Dr. Peter Gray, the book is Free to Learn. It's a
That's
transformative
great.
book.
That's
Transformative
great.
book. Yeah.
So tell me, what do you think? How do we break the habits that are keeping us inside as a family? So somebody is listening to this and they're thinking, well, yeah, I used to play outside a lot more, or maybe they're saying, yeah, my mama used to talk about, not going inside till the street lights came on, but that's just not how we live. How do we break the habit of staying inside?
Do you know that I have a book called Until the Streetlights Come On?
Yes.
Okay, it's gotten brought up a couple times. I was like,
Yes.
oh, that's cool. Okay, here's the thing. There are statistics about this, and there's a woman named Angela Hanscom who is a pediatric occupational therapist. She wrote a fantastic book called Balanced and Barefoot. If there are a couple books I would say if you're kicking off your homeschool journey, I think Free to Learn is phenomenal. I think Balanced and Barefoot is vital. I think The Read Aloud Family is fantastic. It will give you a good foundation.
Yeah.
I really liked Learning All the Time by John Holt and Dumbing Us Down by John Taylor Gatto. If you want to grab 5 books, you could probably get through them in about a month. They're not super long or laborious. They will help you start to determine your educational philosophy. So Angela Hanscom, who's a pediatric occupational therapist, was doing therapy with children indoors. And she said that the waiting list for children to get therapy services all of a sudden skyrocketed. And kids are having to wait a year to get in. It was a big change. So Leigh, you talk about micro change. I think there's been so many micro changes that all of a sudden there was a macro change around the time in life when the smartphones became ubiquitous. So people talk about 2012, 2013. And there's been a lot of experts that have talked about, well, I was a counselor in the high schools, and all of a sudden, there was this huge increase in anxiety when there wasn't any before. No one was coming to see me about anxiety. Now everybody's coming to see me about anxiety. So this Angela Hanscom is saying the same thing. And she says that 3 hours a day is really the optimal amount of time that kids should be outside for their development, for proper development. Now, that seems like a lot of time. If you're listening in and you think, oh, wow, that is a tremendous amount of time, what she says is that is historically normal. If you grew up through the 90s, you probably spent on average, not every single day, but over the course of a year, that amount of time outside. You played in the afternoons, you played on the weekends. There weren't as many screens. Screens were not available 24/7. You maybe didn't have air conditioning. You had less toys. There was less consumerism. So society was set up in a way that protected those spaces of childhood. And all the neighborhood kids were outside. So you're going to look out the window and they're off riding their bikes. You're going to want to go too. You don't want to miss out. So there's some massive societal shifts that have changed that. And the problem is that nobody had this foundational knowledge of why it matters because they didn't need it. Their kids just went out to play. So at this point, first of all, you need to know. You need to know how much it matters. It matters tremendously for all those reasons that we talked about earlier, which was just skimming the surface. There are a tremendous amount of benefits that kids and adults receive simply from going outside. But we started with having a goal. Our goal is to be outside for 1,000 hours. That's the goal. It's research backed. It's 1,000 hours per year. And we have it as a goal because goals are hard. It is hard to set the time aside for it. It is hard to choose some things over other things. It is hard to say, we're too busy, and so we're going to drop a couple of those classes that we're taking. We're going to drop a couple of those extracurriculars for the sake of preserving and prioritizing downtime in childhood. So that's where we started. So we have a goal. We have a little sheet that we color in. We've been doing it since 2013. They're free on our website, which is 1000hoursoutside.com. On our website, you can print out a free, there's like probably 15 designs that have been designed all over the world. We do a contest every year. And the sheets have 1,000 spaces in them, representing 1,000 hours or 500 hours if you do each one for 30 minutes, or make them 15 minutes, do 250 hours. But I think that in this day and age, because screens are so addictive and because childhood has become such a rat race, it's important to have tools that help us preserve what we know matters for our kids.
Yeah. You sure are providing a lot on your website. Something also I think is important. Lisa's younger than me, and one thing I appreciate is you're a lot younger than me, Ginny, and that you are really a force and voice for this message. And what I try to do is to remind the folks that are more my age is that we still have to be the ones outside. So like this last Saturday, last Thursday, I biked 17 miles across the mountain in Virginia and hiked with my sister. And, Lisa, if you come into my house, what we're going to do?
Yep, we're going to the lake.
We're going to the lake, right? And so another problem is that adults have lost childhood. We forget that we are sons and daughters of the King.
That's right.
And he needs us to revel in the beauty and the glory of all the things he's made for us.
Yeah, that's right.
Thank you for sharing that, Leigh. I was going to ask, because I know that you do spend tons of time outside, set the scene for us. What can we, as lead learners in our home, do to model get outside? Stop with the screen, go outside. I love that. You guys, we all know that education, we've already said it, is way more than just academics. So what else is it that our children need to learn? What do we need to pass on? How do we best teach the non-academic fundamentals that we know are vital for our children to know?
Ginny, how do you think all those things you've been describing, this is piggyback with you, Lisa, help our students, our children, our families develop situational awareness?
Yes.
People just can't see what's going on because academics has taught us to look down versus the scriptures. I mean, think about our new babies when they're born. They're in our arms looking up, past us to the stars, past us to our Father. And so I don't think people recognize how often our physical position and location prepare us for all kinds of things. Besides,
that's good.
So you gave us a big list of how they prepare us physically. What are those physical things preparing us to do?
Well, I think there's so much there. There's so much there. I love that you brought that up, Leigh. That we're kind of just looking down and not looking around and seeing what needs are there, what questions are there that we can try and solve, what's going on in the world, what is our place in it. There are so many layers here, and one of the ones I think that is critically important when we talk about getting outside. And I go a lot of times, and now our kids are older, but for most of the childhood, I kind of went along because the neighborhood play isn't really as much of a thing anymore. And for a while, I kind of resented that. And I was thinking, goodness, wouldn't it have been nice to have been a mom in the 80s and just shoo everybody outside with all the other kids and I could have taken a nap. But I also do think that we are in a technological age ourselves. And so I have nursed in the most gorgeous places under the changing leaves and the falling leaves and the, the sun shining and, carried kids and put them in backpacks and had strollers. And then, they hit the age where you're following them. I got to do this rappelling with our oldest daughter. We got invited to go to this Moab, Utah, down the Green River with this company called Moab Adventure Center. And you're on the river for 5 days. You sleep on the banks of the river in these tents and they cook food and you're on the river. And this company invited us out. So it was me and my older daughter went, and there were other adventures. And one of them was rappelling, where you basically like walk off a mountain backwards. Yeah. And I hated it. I was like dangling in the air, screaming. I think I'm going to throw up and asphyxiate. I can't even say the word. Asphyxiate. I'm going to throw up. I'm going to die. I'm screaming, like, get me down. I'm like twirling in the air. I couldn't get the motion right. But, I think that in the guide was like, we've never had anyone like you. My daughter will remember that forever. But that's me chasing her down now. The roles switch. So if you are in a stage of life where you're carrying your 3-year-old and your 2-year-old and your 1-year-old and everyone's crying and you're trying to get back to your car and you went on a trail that was too long and you forgot your snacks and someone spilled their water and someone's shoe broke and you can't,
Have you been watching my family? Oh my word.
It's so worth it. It will change. And then they end up being the one that leads you. But I want to read this. This is from a man named Dr. William Stickstrud, who wrote a book with a man named Ned Johnson about the self-driven child. And here's what he says. A low sense of control is the most stressful thing that we can experience, and an absence of agency contributes strongly to all of the stress-related mental health problems affecting young people, including anxiety disorders, depression, eating and substance use disorders, and self-harm. Increasing a sense of control is one of the most powerful ways of treating mental health problems in children, teens, and adults. So what he says is, it's not easy to sit on your hands, but you have to do it anyway. You have to stop controlling, and you have to really work to be a non-anxious presence. And so when Leigh, you talk about this gives us an opportunity for situational awareness, we also are gaining calm. Calm that we need to be a non-anxious presence in the presence of our children. And also this is giving them an opportunity to have some ownership of their life. And if this is true, which I believe is true, because Dr. William Stickstrud is really well researched and he's kind of old, so he's been researching for a long time, a low sense of control. He says there is little that is more stressful than feeling you do not have agency.
So Lisa, that makes me think about how in classical conversations, how much we emphasize repetition and memorization, because of that exact same reason. The children go, I've done this before. I know how to do it. I can do it again. And it's just a confidence builder versus if you're changing teachers by the bell every hour for 6 different subjects, and then there's another 6 the next year, and you never get to even play with, your parents in an academic setting and understand how they learned. We just have really set up a system designed for failure. And I think people are finally aware of it. So what I love about what you're doing, Ginny, is you're highlighting the problems, but in a fun way that anybody can begin to embrace. Versus us in classical conversations, our job is to say, and you know what, one day a week for half the year, let's get together and study.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
That if you're playing 7 days a week or 6 days a week, you can go 1 day a week and study.
Well,
Yeah.
and then you can, and it's through song, which I mean, this is not a
Yes.
podcast about music, but let me tell you how much I've read about music. I could sing you the
So
timeline song.
much.
Timeline, this is my time.
Timeline.
So the music part of it, and that, like you said, Leigh, the way that it gives you this confidence and this competence to go forward and to be able to connect your new ideas to words you've already heard
Yes.
and concepts that you've already learned in the past. It just makes learning quicker and more fun I really am into reading. I read this book recently by a man named Doug Lemov. I think this actually relates a lot to classical conversations. It's called Guide to the Science of Reading, and it looks like a textbook. We're
Oh.
like, why are you reading that? And I got a chance to interview him, but he talked about how one of the most important things that you can do to help a child with reading, and I believe that reading is the key. I think that if you really want to live the life you want to live, you have to read, because you
Yes.
have to see what the other ideas are. I wouldn't have known how to homeschool except for these people that went before me and
Right.
wrote books so that I could work through those ideas. Like, do I believe that school is prison? Do I believe that it makes sense to have all second graders with second graders? Because John Taylor Gatto says that that's a ridiculous idea, and it's anti-life is actually what he says.
Right.
So people came and they said these strong things, and in your mind and in your life, you start to work through them. So reading, especially in a day and age of cultural conformity, which is so high because of social media,
Yes.
you have to be able to read the works of others to start to figure out what kind of a life you want. So anyway, Doug Lemov, basically, kids are not reading. I talked to this woman named Jean Twangy. She's a college professor. And she's like, these kids are coming to her in college and they didn't read one book at all in high school, not one.
Oh my
Yeah.
word.
And the college professors are assigning magazines, shorter things because no one's reading books. So
Yes.
Doug Lemov said that one of the most important things is that kids have background knowledge. And he gave this example from Charlotte's Web, where he talked about how there's a part where they ask, like the goose asks Charlotte, can she do the word acrobat or something like that? And, and then she's like, it's too many twirls. Or what was the word? It was a word. I said it wrong. So the goose says to Charlotte, can you make this word? And it had like a bunch of L's and twirls. I can't remember what the word was. And she says, well, what do you think I am, an acrobat? And Doug said that they asked the kids in the class, who knows what an acrobat is? And none of them knew. One kid said, I think it might be a magician. And that was the best of all of them. And he said, if you don't know what an acrobat is, and you don't know cursive, you can't.
Then you don't know.
You don't get that little reference there. That's kind of cute and funny. And
Right.
you think I'm an acrobat. I can't spell. What would be a word? Yellow. Yellow or something. A lot of curves.
Right.
And so that was the whole point. Is that part of this situation is that kids are missing all this background knowledge. Well, where do they get it? They can get it from classical conversations. They get it from experiences.
Yes.
But if they don't have that because they're inside all the time and they're on screens, it really is detrimental to their reading.
Yeah.
That was a rabbit trail. But
but that's really true. I love what you said though about context and being outside and playing pretend and playing out in your imagination what you studied during the day. All of that provides context for you to think new thoughts and to think about things that you never thought about before. It gives you a wider playing field, an ever wider playing field for stuff. So Ginny, you were famous as the 1,000-hour outside lady. And so everybody knew you for that. But then you wrote this book, the homeschooling book. You're doing it right just by doing it. Why did you write that book?
Because everyone is worried that they're doing it wrong.
Right. Like there is a right answer out there. Hello.
Yeah,
Has anybody ever found that right answer?
Well, doesn't it seem like, Lisa, like it seems like there's a right answer because like what Leigh brought up earlier, we've been doing the same thing for 100 years and no one has experience beyond their bubble of life. And so if you were a pediatric occupational therapist and happened to be there in 2012, you might have some more insight, but most of us are not. And even for me, I was a teacher and I quit teaching in 2008. Well, that was a year before the iPhone came out. And I didn't have good perspective. I saw the kids starting to cheat on their Blackberries. They were starting to take pictures of text during class and hide it in their shirts. But there's a book called American Girls by Nancy Jo Sales, and she's interviewed teenage girls ages 13 to 19, and it's 10 years old. The book is
Yeah.
across the country. It's actually one of the most jaw-dropping books anyone could ever read. If you're like considering giving your kids a phone and sending them to school,
Yes.
you might want to read it.
That will
But
turn your stomach.
it,
Yeah.
it will turn your stomach. And, so many of us are not really exposed to what actually is happening and what really has changed. And so when 96% of the population is doing things one way, it does seem like there is only one way. And so
Mm.
you have these thoughts in your mind, like I might be doing it wrong, or am I doing it right? So I speak across the country at all of these homeschool conferences, and so many moms come up, and like you brought up at the very beginning, Lisa, like your own story, they feel a pull. They know.
Mhm.
They know. Do you know what the Bible says?
Yeah.
The wise man sees the evil and avoids it. And
Mhm.
there are evil things that are happening. You might feel that pull. Your kid's getting bullied, or whatever the situation is. They're being exposed to things that you don't think are appropriate for them. So you feel that pull, but you're nervous that you're going to do it
Yeah.
wrong.
Yeah. Yes. I think that every homeschooling parent, whether they've been homeschooling for 15 minutes or 15 years, all of us at one time or another say, am I doing it enough? Am I doing it right? Am I messing up my kids? I
Yes.
mean, the answer to that is yes, because
Yeah, we all are. There is no
yeah,
perfect parent. And I meet parents, and I have friends even that I grew up with that homeschool, and they kind of rail on their mom for the experience.
I,
And I'm like, you know what?
she was doing the best she could.
And you don't know what your experience. I think sometimes they idolize what it would have been like in the public school. And I'll be like,
Right.
honey, you have not been there. And I would tell parents, listen, my experience as a public school teacher was that I was new and the school was overcrowded. So I didn't have a classroom. This is actually a really formative experience for me in my life. And it was something I was mad about because I didn't have a classroom, which is a pain. One of the things they
Right.
talk about when you're a public school teacher is like the environment you set up and the way you put your desks. And I didn't have a classroom for years. I had a little cart that had all my stuff on it. Can you imagine you're trying to push this cart through the hallway with like all your textbooks and everybody's graded papers? People are bumping into it. They're knocking your stuff off. You got your protractors and your calculators. It was awful. It was awful. And I had to go to this it was called a cloffice. It was like a closet
Oh
office
gosh.
with like 4 other people, had no windows. It was like in the bowels of the school where my desk was. And it's
Wow.
also where the microwave was for the whole math wing. So people would come. I'd be like, can you not bring fish? Like,
It's right.
I'm going to go home smell like fish. There's no windows in here. So anyway, but the point being is that I spent a considerable amount of time as a young 20-year-old in the
Mhm.
halls of a high school, and the vulgar, disgusting things I overheard
Oh,
walking through, because no one sees that you're a teacher.
right.
They're just having their conversations with their friends. The things I overheard were so off-putting. And that's the point. It's like, do you really know as a parent, like what's going on there, what kids are being
Mhm.
exposed to? And so when adults, they grow up as homeschoolers and they're like, oh, if only I would have gone to public school and I would have had this opportunity or that opportunity. I think you don't know what you don't know. It's not all rainbows and unicorns there. So,
Yeah.
I think part of life is being thankful for what we've been given, and,
Yeah.
and,
Yeah.
and that thing. So
Do
point
you
being,
see
I don't think that you can do homeschool wrong. I don't
right.
think you can. I
Just
think you might
doing it is
change.
doing it
Yeah.
right. Right.
I think you
Do
might
you
change things over
see
the years.
you mentioned that you travel a lot and you speak to a lot. Do you see the homeschool movement gaining traction?
Yes, I do. Part of it is because kids are miserable, and that's really
Yeah.
sad. I had an opportunity just earlier this year where a mom came up to me, and her daughter was in the middle school, and she was in a private school that was so academic focused. So not like classical conversations when you're like half a day a week. And listen, if you're a classical conversations leader, like this is such important community for these moms and these kids. So like have
Yeah.
events and get together outside of it, build those friendships. And, this is really a bridge often for people to feel comfortable that they can homeschool. They join a classical
Yes.
conversations group. I hear so many moms talk about that. It's wonderful for them. So this mom, she's in this, highly academic, so much homework, so much pressure for this middle schooler that she was pulling her hair out
Oh,
all the
yeah.
way down the middle. It was like she had a reverse mohawk.
Mm.
And the thought is that there's a lot of kids like that. There's a lot of moms that
Right.
come up and say, my kid lost, their vision is suffering. All their schoolwork is on the computer. Every math assignment, they're on the computer
100%.
constantly.
Yeah.
So I think it's growing partially because a lot of kids are miserable and parents are at their wits' end. And, you also hope it's growing because people are reading educational philosophy, but really they're not.
Right.
So more so, they're kind of at the end of their rope, but also, you have podcasts like yours and it spreads the word that this is a really well-researched choice
This
and
could be a blessing for your family.
It's a vibrant choice for all. You grow as a parent. If you think, look, I don't have the patience, I don't have the knowledge. Life is about growth. And I think
Right.
God made it so that we get a second and a third pass through with our kids and our grandkids to learn more about this incredible world he made.
Amen. Leigh, you've been leading the charge for 30 plus years. So what has changed for families? What's changed for the better for families that are choosing home-centered education now? And how would you encourage young families to take the plunge?
Mhm. Well, a really, to me, a positive thing was back when we first started homeschooling, we didn't let our children outside to play before 3 o'clock because we
Right,
could
because
be
somebody would
arrested.
see you.
Right?
Mhm.
So it's so accepted now, and that's really wonderful. People don't think we're weird anymore. They may not want to do it or understand it, but they're like, yeah, there's something I admire about that, even if I can't
Right.
explain what it is. And so that's the thing that I think has changed greatly. But what's so wonderful about it is everybody thinks they can bring homeschooling back to their school, right? You and I talk about that as how I'm like Cece, but because they don't understand homeschooling is so different when the parents are in charge versus somebody who comes and goes. And so you can't, and even think about when schools are trying to prove what do they want? Smaller class sizes, more intimate tutorials, like just go home.
Right. Go home. Let your parents provide this for you.
So in the process of wanting what we have, they are making fake versions. And I'm worried about that attracting parents who truly don't understand the joys of what we've been able to share with our children.
Yeah. One of the things, Leigh, I'll just be really honest, that has blessed my family the most um, is what you've always preached, that home-centered education, it's not just about the academics, that the classical model of education is a lifestyle, not an academic style. So the last question I want to ask, and I want both of you to respond to this, is homeschooling a slice of family life, or is it the whole pie? What do you think?
I think people will know our answer.
Yeah,
I
right.
want you to talk about the
Yeah.
answer, though.
Yeah. So, I'll go and then we'll let Ginny have the last word because people remember the last thing they heard. But for me, homeschooling, and people have heard me say this many times, is you wake up each day and you build your family, your home, your marriage, your business, your church, your community, your government, and you do it with your children wandering around you. That's homeschooling.
Mm-hmm. I read when I talked about those books earlier, the one Learning All the Time by John Holt, which the subtitle is How Young Children Learn to Read, Write, Do Math, and Investigate the World Without Being Taught. So that's a challenging book and really interesting to read. But he talked about how young children don't have a chance to see anything done from start to finish. They don't have a view of the adult world. And that really challenged me. I read that when my kids were probably 8 and under. And, I thought, well, gosh, this is not me orchestrating everything. This is me showing them how to live. And also showing them the downsides of it. Like, look, my house is not very clean. And, there are a lot of things that I have not figured out yet. And that's okay. That's okay.
Yeah.
There's not some unrealistic expectation for them. It's about showing up. It's about give us this day our daily bread. It's about showing up for that day. I talk about how play, and when we allow children to develop at the pace that they're meant to, that it makes today better, but it also prepares them for tomorrow. And what a blessing that is. I think that as a culture, we're sacrificing today for the sake of tomorrow. And that doesn't work. It doesn't work because kids have to learn how to love life and they have to learn how to have joy. And you can't give them a whole childhood that's solely preparing for college and they sucks the life out of them and hope that they're going to have a happy life. They're not. They haven't learned those skills along the way. And so they have to learn that life is not prison and that there's a lot of joy out there. And they learn that from you as a parent. So this is really a journey of modeling, and kids are so siphoned off from the real world and from adult world, and they struggle. So they say 26 is the new 18. No one wants to go there. There's a woman named Linda Flanagan, and she wrote a book called Take Back the Game about toxic youth sports culture. And this will be the last thing I say, but she says, how are we presenting adulthood?
Yes.
Are we presenting it as a big bore that all you do is sit on the sidelines? Or are we presenting it as this enticing, wonderful destination where you still get to learn and you get to love your family and be around your family and ask God for wisdom and grow and get better at things and have skills and be with people and build relationships? That's what we've got to show our kids, and that's what they're not seeing. And I think the results are in. They're really struggling. So this offers a wonderful, wonderful alternative. Thank you to you for all you do with Classical Conversations. I have met so many families across the country that are so thankful for their groups and the relationships that they're building there, and for often it's their first step into home education. And so they feel such a solid ground with that. And it's wonderful what you're doing.
It's a support. It's a community.
Yeah.
Well, you guys, you need to read this. I love it. That one of my favorite parts in there, Ginny, and I wrote the quote down, but I have thrown the paper to the side and I can't reach it without going off camera. So I'm not going to pick it up, but it's somewhere in this book. And it was about what you just said, mentoring. When your children are home with us, they're going to learn how to add, and they're going to learn how to read, and they're going to learn their history, and they can memorize the CC timeline. But also they will learn from looking at you how to care for other people. Yeah. And how to react to obstacles, and how to overcome, and how to forgive themselves. And so if you decide to homeschool, you are doing it right.
That's
just
right.
by doing it.
That's right.
So Ginny, thank you. Leigh, as always, thank you. Guys, I have to say, it's a wrap. It's a wrap. Thank you, listeners, for joining us today. It is a joy to walk along such a vibrant and curious community of learners. If today's episode encouraged you or equipped you in any way, we would love for you to share it with a friend. You can leave us a comment below. Remember, the heart of classical home education is not about checking boxes. It's about cultivating wisdom and virtue and wonder with your own family, and by extension, with your community. So go and keep learning and enjoy the journey. Bye, y'all.